A soft copper glow drifts across the table, and resting there is something that looks like spare change, but today, one of these humble discs could quietly be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars. You might have pocketed a 1997 penny at some point, scarcely noticing it. Yet in the hands of someone who knows what to look for, that same penny can reveal minting quirks and missteps that elevate it from common circulation to prized rarity. The story of the 1997 1-cent piece isn't about grand proclamations or headline-grabbing treasures, it's about subtle details, slight deviations, whispers of error that only the keenest eyes among experienced collectors pick up on. If you've ever wondered whether a penny you've kept in a drawer might be hiding secret value, this first segment is for you. We're unpacking the birth of the 1997 Lincoln cent, the tiny flaws that made some specimens extraordinary, the auction results that surprised even veteran dealers, and how condition can transform a coin from a few cents to four figures. The 1997 Lincoln cent was struck at two mints, Philadelphia, no mint mark, and Denver, with the D mint mark. Both carry the familiar Lincoln portrait by Victor D. Brenner on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, a design in continuous use since 1959. But beneath that uniform surface, subtle variations arose. In Philadelphia, die polishing lines sometimes remain faintly visible around Lincoln's shoulder. In Denver, double die impressions turned up on the date and the motto. These quirks began at the moment steel dies were prepared and hardened, when microscopic shifts could leave behind extra metal that transferred to the planchet. To the untrained glance, every 1997 cent looks identical. Yet under magnification, you might spot a second 9 ghosting behind the primary one, or tiny raised lines near the rim that betray where a die was misaligned. The most sought-after 1997 variety is the double die obverse, DDO, from Denver, often catalogued as FS 101. On these coins, the date and the letters Liberty show clear doubling, sometimes described as a shadow effect. That doubling occurs when the die receives two misaligned impressions in the hubbing press, so that details appear twice, slightly offset. In top grades, MS 65 and above, a DDO 1997 D cent can command $200 to $400. A few exceptional specimens, graded MS 68 by PCGS or NGC, have traded hands for over $1,000 at major auctions. The finest known examples show razor-sharp details in Lincoln's hair and the memorial steps, with no trace of circulation wear. Auction records for the 1997 D double die include a heritage sale in 2018 where an MS 67 example brought $475, more than 20 times the typical value of a circulated 1997 D cent. More recently, a 2023 Stack's Bowers auction saw an MS 68 piece hit $1,125, reflecting growing interest among specialists in modern-era coins. Those prices stand in stark contrast to the 20 to 50 cent range that a typical unremarkable MS 65 specimen might fetch. Beyond the double die, another rare variety lurks, the 1997 P off-center strike. These occur when the planchet shifts slightly during striking, so part of Lincoln's portrait is missing or cut off. Most off-center cents show only minor misalignment, perhaps 5 to 10% off-center, and are worth only $1 or $2 above face. But when the error exceeds 50% off-center, revealing a mostly blank field on one side, collectors prize the dramatic misstrike. In EF 45 to -50 Australian dollars condition, a 50% off-center 1997 P cent might bring $50 to $75. Push that to MS 60 with full luster and crisp edges, and values can climb north of $150. One of the most fascinating sales stories involves a Denver dealer who spotted a 1997 P cent with 60% off-center strike at a local coin show. Initially purchased for face value in a lot of miscellaneous modern cents, it later sold for $225 after authentication and grading. The dealer later noted that the blank portion of the coin retained original mint red coloration, a sign it never circulated, boosting its eye appeal and collector demand. Condition dramatically influences value. A completely circulated 1997 penny, soft details, flattened high points, light scratches, rarely exceeds 10 or 15 cents on the collector market, regardless of mint mark or minor doubling. In contrast, an MS-63 example of the standard business strike, no doubling, can fetch $2 to $4. At MS-65, the same coin might reach $10 to $15, simply for its pristine surfaces and full mint red color. Only the top 0.1% of coins attain MS-67 or higher. These show perfect surfaces, bold devices, and deep cartwheel luster. It's in that ultra-select group where error varieties and premium grades intersect, delivering 5- and 4-figure price tags. Hidden stories attached to individual specimens. One collector recalls finding a 1997 D cent in a pocket change roll still in its original USPS wrapper, untouched since it left the mint. Under magnification, the coin showed faint dye polish lines on Lincoln's shoulder, evidence of the mint worker's final cleaning stroke, plus the double dye shadow on the motto. That single coin, pulled from everyday circulation decades later, sold for $375 to a specialist in modern errors. It's a reminder that even coins you think you know can surprise you if you slow down, look closely, and learn the tiny signals that separate the mundane from the extraordinary. For anyone holding 1997 pennies in boxes, jars, or albums, the takeaway is simple: examine them carefully. Seek out doubling on the date and lettering, check for off-center strikes, and note the preservation of original red luster. Use a 10x loupe or a low-power microscope, and compare against reference photos from trusted guides. The base cost of grading, around $20 per coin through a major service, can be quickly recouped if you've got an MS-66 DDO or a dramatic off-center piece. So before you consign that shoebox of modern cents to the basement, take a moment under magnification. What seems like 3 cents in everyday spending money could, with the right combination of rarity, condition, and eye appeal, turn into a small fortune. And that, for experienced collectors and weekend hobbyists alike, is where the real thrill lives, in knowing that any coin, no matter how common it appears, might just be your next great discovery. If the 1987 penny represents the quiet charm of the late copper-plated zinc era, the 2010 penny comes in like a reboot, bold, rebranded, and modern. 2010 wasn't just another year in the Lincoln cent lineup. It was the first year of the shield reverse design, replacing the Lincoln Memorial after more than 50 years. That design shift alone makes 2010 a landmark year. But what really gets collectors buzzing isn't just the updated look, it's the varieties and errors that slipped into circulation early on, right as the U.S. Mint was adjusting to the new tooling and die combinations. Some of the most surprising 2010 cents have come from standard rolls, pocket change, or overlooked coin jars, hiding in plain sight for years before collectors caught on. Let's start with the basics. The 2010 penny features the familiar bust of Lincoln on the obverse, still based on Victor D. Brenner's 1909 design, but the reverse now shows a Union shield with 13 vertical stripes and a single horizontal bar across the top. It's meant to symbolize national unity, a nod to Lincoln's preservation of the Union. The design was sculpted by artist Lyndall Bass and engraved by Joseph Mena. While it may not look radical at first glance, this change was huge. Any time the mint rolls out a new design, especially on a coin as widely circulated as the penny, it opens the door for transitional errors, early die state flaws, and collector intrigue. The most talked about variety from 2010 is the so-called wide AM reverse. Now, this one's a bit of a twist because it's technically not supposed to exist. Starting in 1993, the standard design for the penny placed the letters A and M in America very close together. But a few coins struck in later years were mistakenly made with a reverse design intended for proof coins, where the A and M are spaced farther apart. That error was famously found in multiple years between 1998 and 2000. While 2010 wasn't officially part of the wide AM era, a handful of collectors began reporting reverse dies with wider spacing, particularly from the Philadelphia Mint. Whether these were leftover dies or transitional errors isn't fully confirmed, but authenticated examples now carry strong premiums. A certified 2010 wide AM in MS66RD can sell for $150 to $300, and some pristine MS67s have fetched over $500 in recent online sales. Even more unusual are 2010 cents struck on foreign planchets or transitional stock. A few confirmed examples were minted on planchets intended for other countries, such as copper-plated steel blanks or thinner stock used for Canadian cents. These coins usually weigh under 2.5 grams and often have a slightly different hue. They're tough to identify without a scale or metal analyzer, but when certified, they're hot commodities. A 2010 penny on a foreign planchet recently sold at auction for $1,025 in AU condition, largely because of how rare and unexplained these strikes are. And then we come to the missing FG variety, named after the absence of designer Frank Gasparo's initials, which should appear on the right side of the shield's base. On a small number of 2010 shield cents, this FG is completely missing, not due to wear, but due to grease-filled dies or die polishing that wiped out the detail. These coins gained traction after being found in sealed bank rolls in 2012 and 2013. While not a double die in the traditional sense, they represent a legitimate and consistent mint error. In grades MS65 and higher, the missing FG 2010 cent typically brings $75 to $125, with top pop grades exceeding $200. Another strong error contender is the 2010 off-center strike. As with the earlier dates, coins struck off-center are instantly recognizable, and in high-grade red condition, they're worth serious attention. A well-centered strike missing 50% or more of the design, but still showing the date, can fetch $200 or more depending on overall eye appeal. Even smaller off-center strikes, around 10 to 15%, are bringing $40 to $75 in today's market, especially for coins pulled directly from mint rolls and preserved in flawless condition. And speaking of rolls, 2010 rolls are still being searched, and some surprising discoveries have come from them. A collector in Nevada purchased a sealed bank box of 2010 D shield cents in 2020, intending to give them away at a local school event. Beforehand, they cracked open 2 rolls just for fun and spotted what looked like an unusually bold 2010 date with signs of doubling. Upon further inspection under a microscope, they had stumbled onto a minor double die obverse. The doubling was visible on the date and parts of "In God We Trust." The coin was submitted to a third-party grader, came back MS66RD, and eventually sold privately for $275. Not bad for a few minutes of curiosity and a couple of unopened rolls. Condition is king for this year, even more than most. With a new design came new dies, and collectors jumped on fresh examples from the get-go. MS65RD 2010 cents are relatively common, but anything above MS67 is surprisingly scarce, especially when paired with a major variety or error. Registry said builders push these top pop coins to premium levels, often well over $500. Even without a recognized variety, an MS68RD 2010 D penny has brought $725 at public auction, simply due to its flawless strike and unbroken red color. For circulated 2010 pennies, most are worth face value unless they exhibit a major error. But if the coin still holds full red color, crisp rims, and no signs of handling, it could be worth sending in for grading, especially if it shows any die markers like doubling, rim cuds, or die cracks. Keep an eye out for shield details that appear too soft or distorted, which could point to an early die state or a potential grease strike. Here's a fun twist to end this section. A small number of collectors have spotted 2010 cents with partial collar strikes, meaning the retaining collar that shapes the coin's edge didn't engage properly during minting. This causes the coin to appear slightly wider or thicker, with a bulging or irregular rim. Though rare, these kinds of striking errors have a niche following and usually sell for $100 to $200 in mint state, depending on the severity and clarity of the error. The bottom line? The 2010 penny is more than a design refresh. It's a case study in how a modern coin, released in the millions, can still produce genuine rarities and overlooked treasures. Whether you're into dramatic errors, subtle varieties, or pristine condition pieces, the Shield Cent's debut year offers all of it, and plenty of room to explore. And that brings us full circle. 3 coins. 3 different decades. Each one telling its own story through tiny imperfections, minting quirks, and collector passion. The 1997 penny shows us how a simple double die can elevate a common year. The 1987 gives us a glimpse into transitional errors and how small differences, like a shadowed earlobe, can hold real value. And the 2010 penny reminds us that even recent issues, just over a decade old, can be loaded with collectible surprises if you know where to look. Whether you're an experienced numismatist or just someone who's held on to a few old coins, just in case, these examples show that sometimes, the smallest denominations carry the biggest stories. Keep looking closely, stay curious, and always flip that coin one more time. You never know what history might be waiting to shine through. From one decade to the next, the Lincoln cent has a way of staying just familiar enough to escape notice, until you dig deeper. The 1987 penny is a perfect example. At a glance, it looks like every other cent of the era. But this is where things get interesting. 1987 marked the tail end of a period where both design flaws and production quirks slipped through at rates that would raise eyebrows today. For collectors in the know, this year has become something of a magnet for obscure errors and oddities. And for owners of circulated change or full penny rolls from the late 80s, this is one coin worth a second look. The 1987 Lincoln cent was struck at 3 U.S. mints: Philadelphia, no mint mark; Denver, D, and San Francisco, S, with the S mint coin struck only in proof format for collectors. The regular strike pennies from Philly and Denver were business strikes, meaning they were intended for circulation, and it's within those, particularly the Denver output, that we find most of the valuable varieties. One of the most talked about versions of the 1987 penny is the double deer variety from Denver. Known formally as the 1987 DDDOFS 101, this coin displays a clear doubling on Lincoln's earlobe, an instantly visible marker for those familiar with doubled dies. The doubling is strong enough that it doesn't take magnification to notice, although a loop helps reveal the full extent of the shift. This variety is believed to have originated from a hubbing error where the die received a misaligned second strike, a common issue in the 80s before digital die production. When this variety hit the mainstream coin community, it didn't take long for collectors to start combing through their old stashes. In mint state condition, particularly MS 65 red and above, these coins began appearing at auction and quickly broke triple digits. As of now, a certified MS 66 RD, red designation, 1987 D doubled ear cent fetches around $150 to $250. Higher grades like MS 67 RD can cross the $400 mark, with the finest examples inching closer to $1,000 due to scarcity and demand. Another notable error from the 1987 cent series is the off-metal strike. A handful of 1987 pennies were accidentally struck on dime planchets. These are smaller, silver-colored blanks typically used for 10-cent pieces. When this happens, you get a Lincoln cent with most of the design cut off, squeezed onto a dime-sized flan. The results are dramatic and unmistakable. These error coins weigh only about 2.27 grams instead of the expected 2.5, and they lack a copper coating. A circulated example can sell for $150 to $300 depending on how much detail remains visible. Uncirculated versions can exceed $500 easily, and if the coin has full date and mint mark, it becomes even more desirable. A standout example came from an estate sale in Kansas, where an old Whitman album contained a 1987 penny struck on a dime planchet, complete with full Liberty and In God We Trust, but only partial Lincoln bust detail. That coin, certified as -58 Australian dollars by PCGS, sold for $385 in a regional auction, well above typical expectations. These kinds of discoveries often come from casual collectors or inherited collections, which makes them even more intriguing. Another variety that pops up occasionally is the 1987 P or 1987 D penny struck with broadstrike errors. These occur when the retaining collar that keeps the planchet in place during striking fails, allowing the metal to expand more than usual. The result is a noticeably wider, thinner penny with soft edges and often distorted rims. While less valuable than off-metal errors, broadstrikes still attract strong interest, especially if the coin is in high grade. Typical value, $25 to $75, but exceptional examples can go higher if the coin also has strong luster and no post-mint damage. Condition plays a huge role in determining value here. Most 1987 pennies from circulation, even if they've avoided heavy wear, don't climb past the $1 mark unless they show errors. But in uncirculated condition, especially with full red color and clean surfaces, prices jump quickly. A regular MS-65RD 1987 D cent sells for $5 to $10. Push that to MS-67RD, and it might bring $50 or more depending on the market at the time. These jumps in price are driven by population reports from grading companies. If only a dozen examples exist in a particular grade, competition among registry set builders can heat up fast. It's also worth mentioning the proof-only 1987 S cent struck at the San Francisco Mint and sold directly to collectors as part of annual proof sets. These coins are mirror-like and highly detailed. Most 1987 S proofs are plentiful and worth about $2 to $5 in original condition. However, cameo and deep cameo versions, where Lincoln's portrait is heavily frosted and contrasts sharply against the shiny fields, carry a bit of a premium. PR-69 DCAM specimens are common, but perfect PR-70 DCAM examples have sold for $50 to $75, simply due to the difficulty of achieving flawless perfection. Now, a quick collector's tale worth sharing. A man in Indiana, retired military and longtime coin hobbyist, bought 5 rolls of 1987 D pennies back in 1988 and stored them untouched in his gun safe. Decades later, curious about what he had, he opened them up, and in the third roll found a double deer variety in blazing mint red. After sending it in for grading, it came back MS-66RD and sold to a prominent Lincoln cent specialist for $375. Not a life-changing payday, but a thrilling reward for a bit of patience and curiosity. When hunting through 1987 cents, your best tools are patience, a bright light, and a solid 10 times loop. Focus on Lincoln's ear, his throat, the Liberty inscription, and the date. Also pay attention to weight. Off-metal strikes will feel slightly lighter, and color. Copper-plated zinc cents from 1982 onward tend to corrode in odd ways, so pristine red surfaces are harder to find. If a coin is bright, unblemished, and error-free, it could still carry a premium just for its grade. And if you've got 1987 pennies stashed in coffee cans, desk drawers, or sealed tubes, now's the time to break them out and give them a second look. You might find something common, but you might also uncover a piece of U.S. minting history that turns out to be a low-key gem in the modern market.